That's my current plan.
And we're
Be one of my
honored to have you
first
there.
travels.
Yeah. That sounds fantastic. I look forward to you being there. Well, I'll have to go out to dinner.
Oh, yeah. Well, we definitely will.
Is it in New Orleans?
No, it's in
No, it's
Baton
not.
Rouge.
I'm sorry, where is it?
Baton Rouge.
Oh, it's in Baton
Baton
Rouge.
Rouge. So we fly into New Orleans, drive to Baton Rouge, get a ticket for speeding, and then we'll be at the meeting. The last time I did that, I did get a ticket for illegal parking.
Oh,
And
no.
so this time I'm going to get one for speeding. Maybe not.
I was down there last. I was down there last
Obviously.
December, and that's exactly the route I took. David was going into New Orleans, so a little adventuresome rather than flying directly into Baton Rouge. But it worked out.
I think I'm going to drive down.
That's a good idea, Terry.
Yeah, I can take my stuff that way. I get tired of flying. Flying isn't as much fun as it used to be.
I haven't gotten that far in the schedule yet. I'm not sure what I'm doing for sure.
Yeah.
And
You
I have
just
a
know you're
feeling-
going to be there.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I have a feeling Terry will have a camera or two with her and maybe arrive a few days early.
Oh yeah, that seems to be what my sister was thinking about going, because apparently the ocean isn't that far away. But I think now we've decided to do a sister's trip somewhere else.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need another cruise.
Very close to the hotel. In fact, it's right at the feet of Mississippi River, the hotel is.
Yeah. Do you know when the website will open for registration?
We were shooting for the 1st of January, but it's going to be probably mid to late January. So it's looking now.
Okay. Yeah, I saw I knew we had Dave Eicher and Fred Espinac now, so that ought to be.
David's going to be there too. So
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got David too. That'll be great.
All right.
We have two Davids. We'll be confusing the two.
yeah, we'll have
Yeah.
to come up with some kind of scheme, I guess, on how to keep them straight.
Bob, you've been on before, is that right?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I was on most recently on the Halloween program. Speaking
yeah.
of Dave Biker.
That was fun.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah,
That
that
was
We
was
have to
fun.
hilarious.
beat David Eicher at his own game next time, so.
Yeah, next year.
We need to connive between now and next Halloween, really, to
Yeah,
have a
we are dressing up next Halloween.
Yeah, that's really a good one time. Maybe I'll bring on my old Halloween costume I had many years ago. I went to a party dressed as Light.
That's
Light.
light.
There was a lot of white clothing and a white top hat involved and light bulbs and things. Oh.
I tried the Invisible Woman once.
The Invisible Woman?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
how
didn't
did
show
that
up at
go?
all.
How'd that work, Terry?
I'm going as a fungus.
There's so many ways to do that.
This image is one of the most iconic of all Hubble images, called Mystic Mountain, and it is a place of enormously active star formation. This entire pillar is about 3 light years in duration. That means it's so long that it takes light traveling at 186,000 miles per second. It takes it 3 years to go from bottom to top. And the entire area is filled with this really condensed collection of dust and gas that's created this stellar nursery. You see on the outside edge here, where the material is heated and evaporating off the surface of the cloud, but you also have stellar winds that are sculpting this like a Michelangelo that would be sculpting a statue, knocking pieces of the nebula off into interstellar space. So you have a mechanical sculpting process along with a heating process from the radiation coming off of the stars. So the two together are what combine to create this gloriously detailed image. You see these jets coming out of 2 sides of that top pillar, And down here, again, those are signatures of stars actually forming. Material is coming down, collapsing onto the star, getting heated up, and when it tries to get out, it has to shoot out in jets. This bow shape, that is actually a shock wave from the material in the jet hitting the interstellar medium and heating it up. One of the best images I think that we've gotten, but this one is just the right angle that you get a gorgeous view of it. It's become an iconic image, I think, for several reasons. One is that it has such incredible detail in there, but also because it holds a fascination as being a place where we can actually see stellar systems forming before our eyes. It's also famous, I think, because of its sheer beauty. I mean, there's a lot of art in Hubble images. A large fraction of the value of Hubble is not just to give us the science data that we need, but it's to appreciate the beauty of the universe.
Hello, everybody. This is Scott Roberts from Explore Scientific and the Explore Alliance. And here we are back on Friday evening with Astronomical League Live featuring Bob King. We've got David Levy, Terry Mann, Carol Orge. A lot of your favorite people are here, including William. Is it William or Bill Dillon?
Hey, Bill's fine.
Bill. Okay, great. Okay. So you can call me Scott. You can call me Scotty. Scotto-san, if you whatever, okay, just but we're going to have fun tonight, and we're looking forward to hearing everything that is going on in the Astronomical League. So let's tune in and bring Terry Mann, our special host, on, who's done all the Astronomical League lives. Here we go.
Thank you, Scott. Tonight, we're going to try something a little bit different. We will be going to David Levy here in just a minute, but let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. I thought it might be kind of nice to bring the officers of the league on so you could kind of meet them. And you have met almost all of the officers. Actually, I think Bill Dillon, our treasurer, is the only one you probably haven't seen at one time or another. But I thought it would just be kind of good to tell you how our year's been, what's been going on, what each office kind of does, and we'll probably all just join in and, discuss a little bit as each one's introduced. They'll probably tell a little bit about what they do, and then that way we can just kind of get the feel of what it's like to be an officer in the league, because we're always looking for people to step up and volunteer. So listen in, see what you think. If you have any questions, put them in chat and we'll see what we can do. And from that, I think I am going to ask David Levy if he would like to start us off.
Well, thank you very much, Terry, and it's wonderful to be here at the League. And before anybody else says anything, the League is going to have their annual convention near Baton Rouge, Louisiana this summer. And I will be there, and I want all of us to be there. Okay, so get your tickets in the next 2 minutes. No, not in the next 2 minutes, but pretty soon. Or get in your car and drive. But this is going to be great. I wouldn't want to miss a Louisiana meeting. Anyway, I want to begin my quote today, which will be from Shakespeare's Macbeth, with a joke, and it is the oldest joke in the world. I was on a cruise with Wendy, one of the fun cruises we had, to see the eclipse of the sun in August of 1999, and I was really enjoying that cruise when one of the people came out with a joke that I thought was so funny I was laughing for days. And the joke was this. A Greek person comes in with a torn jacket to a cleaner's to have it repaired. And the cleaner looks at the guy and he says, "Euripides." See, one of you guys is laughing. And the guy took up the jacket and says, "Eumenides." Anyway, so one of us likes it. And I couldn't stop laughing. I was telling somebody about 2 days later about it, and she said, "That's the oldest joke in the world. It's not even funny anymore." And so I felt a little bad about that, but I'm still laughing from it. Anyway, a day after that, someone was talking to me on the deck. And when I was studying Macbeth, I went right past this quotation. It didn't do anything for me until that night on the cruise ship when someone said, he talked about the eclipse of the sun, probably the one from 1605. And this will be the quote that I'm going to give you right now. Notice that he doesn't mention the sun, at least by name, and he doesn't mention the word eclipses. But this quote shows, I think, Shakespeare's profound interest in the sky. "By the clock 'tis day, and yet dark night strangles the traveling lamp. Is it the night's predominance or the day's shame that darkness does the face of earth entomb when living light should kiss it?" Thank you very much, and back to you, Terry.
Thank you, David. That's beautiful. And thank you for the joke. That is good. I think what we'd like to do now is go to Carol. We'll just go ahead and kind of start here. And Carol, how about if you just talk about, your position, what you do, what it's like to be president of the league, and just kind of give us a feel for what you think.
Sure. Yes, being president of a 22,000 member organization is a breeze, nothing to it. On certain
No
days-
lies.
On other days, the buck stops with me, and it's so. But most of the time, it's been a very pleasant organization. Like I say, we have 22,000 members across the country and in foreign countries, and we're constantly looking for better ways of serving the amateur community. And most of you who are listening out there are aware of our observing programs, which are a major part of the reason members join the league in the first place, through either their local clubs or individually, or even as a foreign membership in several cases, and it's becoming more prevalent as we go along. The Astronomical League is actually governed by a national council. We meet yearly at the Alcon that David Levy was just talking about. This year it'll be in Baton Rouge, the 26th through the 29th of July 2023. And we have make the major decisions there. We have an all-day meeting and make those decisions with representatives from each of our 10 regions. And that's the we set up the initiatives for the year at that meeting. In between meetings, the council, which includes the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and executive secretary, we're the governing body in between council meetings. As Terry said earlier, we're always looking for good people who have some extra time to give to the league. And we are, out of our 22,000 members, we have about 3 or 4 employees, contractors, and the rest are all volunteers. And it all works because of our common passion for amateur astronomy. And so that's just a snapshot of what my position is about. I would talk about some of our successes in 2022. We have actually, stepping back a year before that, 2021, with COVID raging, we actually had an Alcon in 2021 virtually, a very successful event. And thanks to Scott Roberts and Explore Scientific, we expanded that concept at Alcon 2022 in Albuquerque. And this upcoming Alcon, we envision having a much more active virtual part going with that. So stay tuned on that. And with that, Terry, why don't I go ahead and go back, and we can go back and forth.
Okay, yeah. Okay, how about if we just go ahead and go to Bill, and basically, Bill, just do the same thing, a little bit about what you do, and then we'll come back and just kind of group talk a little bit about this.
Okay, so this is Bill Dillon, and I come to you from beautiful Botetourt County in Southwest Virginia, nestled between the Appalachian Mountains and the Blue Ridge Mountains. and a lovely part of the country. And I want to make a shout out to a fellow who's responsible for me being in this position. And that's a guy who many of you know, that's John Goss. He and I belong to the same local astronomy club here in Roanoke, the Roanoke Valley Astronomical Society. And about 4 years ago, John says, "Hey, you got any free time in your hand? Would you like to, kind of get involved a little more than?" And so here I am, starting the second year of my second term as treasurer of this organization. And actually, when you talk about people who deal with 186,000 miles per second on a regular basis, you get into accounting that I do, and it's pretty boring. But I pay the bills that the Astronomical Society comes up with, and we have quite a few of those. But we're doing really well. I have to say that this organization continues to be financially strong. We have in excess of $112,000 in cash, and we are a cash organization, so it's important that we be able to maintain those balances, and we're doing well. But like everybody else today, both individuals and organizations, we all have challenges. And we have a challenge here with the Astronomical Society with one of our most important expenses, which is also where we really display ourselves, and that's with our Reflector magazine. The cost of paper has gone up dramatically for over about the past year. So that's something we're having to deal with. And the officers have been talking about this for some time, and we have some plans in the future for how we can address that and continue to produce the best quarterly magazine in the astronomical community. It is really well done, as you all know, and I think it's something we should all be proud of. I don't have a lot to talk about unless you want to talk about debits and credits or Quicken, software or something like that. It's just
We prefer
actually
credit,
something I
Bill.
really enjoy. My background is accounting and finance, and I told my wife when I took this job, it was one of the most fun things I did every day, because I really like getting back to doing debits and credits in accounting like I used to do 50 years ago when I first started. So it's just one of those things we got to do. And it's expected. We have to report, we have to file taxes, we got to do all that stuff that any organization has to do. And so that's kind of what I do, and takes not a lot of time, but I enjoy doing it, and I'm happy to do it for this organization. So thanks again, John Goss, for getting me involved as you have. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, one thing I do want to say is Chuck Allen could not join us. He is helping an injured friend, and he is way out where there is not good internet. He said he wished he could be here, but for right now, he needs to be where he's at right now. So he will catch us another time. So I guess what I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and talk about the secretary position. I'm secretary. Everybody kind of knows that. Basically, I keep track of the minutes, and I keep track of meetings. I keep track of most things that, are going on that are discussed within the officers and council of the league. And, when I'm at Alcon, I find myself pretty busy. Between our meetings, Carol didn't mention, our meetings have been very long sometimes. But now we use Zoom quite a bit. So we're able to kind of offset the meeting length because we can discuss some things on Zoom. We don't have to take everything into our council meetings, because I think back when I first started in the league, it was nothing to do a 10-hour meeting and then come back and meet again the next day. I had one of those meetings like that. So, there is a lot going on. There's a lot that needs to be kept record of, so we know what's going on. You work with every officer, and very honestly, all of us know each other very well, where we all usually go out, go to dinner, sit down, talk. We're all friends. We all can pick up a phone and call each other. So it's a very nice community within the Astronomical League. And I think that's why we all enjoy it. We know we can lean on the other people or talk to the other people, and that makes a big difference, I think, for all of us. So I do that. Part of my job, as you all know too, I work with the Global Star Parties. I basically am the liaison between the league. I work with Scott. I keep everybody in rotation when they're going. I put together the PowerPoints for the programs, but the people that are on that night will do their own questions. So, every night, and as you'll see tonight for the door prizes, we do our own questions when we do this. I just keep the PowerPoints and keep all the slides from one GSP to the other GSP together and put them together, and then get the questions and the names of the winners. So that keeps me kind of busy. But then I do this too. I do Astronomical League Live. And this one, I definitely work with Scott, but I put the programs together. I contact people, I coordinate everything, and I love it because I've met so many incredible people. It has been an amazing thing to do, and trying to keep this straight, and the winners and the PowerPoints and the people, it's a lot of fun. So I am very fortunate to be working with Scott, to be working with the league.
Likewise.
And then, what was that?
I said likewise.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. I'm also a trustee of the league, as Bill Dillon is also the treasurer of the trust fund. So I work with the trustees when we have issues we need to discuss. And I also chair the Great Lakes region. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to kind of meet the people that are within the regions. Usually in the summertime, I try to get to some star parties, but COVID really put a dent in that. And this year was the first year I've really ventured out, to a few star parties. And it's nice to meet our members, because even if I'm not within the league or within the region star parties, I've met so many people. John Goss, I forget the first time where I met John, but John is an incredible guy to work with too. He does all of our announcements for AL Live and anything else we need. He is fantastic with media. He's really good, and he does it in the drop of a hat. You can always depend on John, which makes it so nice. So he's another good member of the league that we all sit down and talk and joke. And then I also I'm the president of IDA Ohio. So I work kind of with IDA in the state of Ohio. And again, COVID kind of put a little bit of a crunch on that, but we're getting everything back together then. And that's why I retired, so I could do things I really enjoy doing, because they all work together. IDA and the league, dark skies is very important when you're into astronomy, whether you're visual or an imager, or wildlife, whatever it is. Dark skies are important, and we're definitely losing them. So I find myself very tied up, very active as I want to be. I'm like the rest of you guys. I can stay busy every minute of the day doing something. But the good news is I think we all enjoy what we're doing, or we wouldn't do it. And that's right. What I think when we look for people that want to be involved in the league, it does take a commitment of time, but how much, you question how much time before you volunteer for a position. But it's really worth it. I have found that with most astronomical societies and places that I have worked with in astronomy, the people are amazing. Look at Scott, look at Bob King. Bob King is like an expert outreach person. I meet him at Aurora Summit. I meet him at multiple places. He's an amazing person. And if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to meet him, to meet Scott or Carol or David or Bill or anybody, so it's really an amazing thing to do. And I really recommend, take a look when we're looking for officers, take a look at what what positions we're looking for and what's involved in that position, and consider it, because we are always looking for people that are interested. So with that, I'm going to be quiet. And what I would like to do, Scott, Maynard Pitt is our exec sec, and he cannot be here tonight either. And so he made a video. And so I'm going to ask Scott if you would go ahead and run that, please.
Okay. We will
Thank you.
That. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So So here we go. Maynard, thanks for doing this if you're out there watching.
Good evening. My name is Maynard Pitt, and I'm the Executive Secretary of the Astronomical League. And let me tell you, it is a joy and a pleasure for me to work for you and for the field of astronomy. This has been a delightful part of my life. Now, the work of the Executive Secretary comes in 7 parts. The first part is to oversee the national headquarters of the Astronomical League. And I've got to tell you, you should be very proud of our staff people in the national office. I often tell folks that the Astronomical League is an almost all volunteer organization. I don't get paid for what I do, and all the observing coordinators, they don't get paid for all the hard work they do. And
Hey, Scott,
the person
can
who
you
does
give
the
me
web page and the treasurer and the president and all these different jobs, we're just volunteers, just like in your local clubs. But we do have 3 individuals who are part of our paid staff: Mitch Glaze, Judith Riley, things like
Terry, you were mentioning something?
Yeah, I'm still on the screen. I'm still spotlighted.
Okay, let me fix that.
Okay, thank you.
making sure that if someone is unable or no longer willing to serve in a position, there's a process to replace that individual. And I serve as the secretary. When the secretary is not present, I will keep the minutes of the meeting. And there's a process with adoption of amendments to the bylaws. Everybody can take a big yawn right now. I know that sounds boring, but things like that become important, or maybe they're just necessary. And that's part of my job as well. I think one of the things that I want to share as I wrap this up is that we all have hopes for the future. And during the past year, the Astronomical League has been moving toward the future in dynamic ways. I think most notably, many of us are working in areas to give more diversity to our membership. We want our organization to have a greater balance of genders and races and ages. And, hate to say it, but many of the clubs, the members look just like me. And that's not true of all clubs. But this will work best if all the local clubs and societies take part in bringing in more diversity. You've got to make your clubs more interesting and welcoming to young people. If you're not already doing so, I encourage you to think about how you can do that and to reach out to different genders and different races and cultures. We want more diversity in the Astronomical League. Another concern that your officers have is we want our organization to be more international. And I think we're making some progress in this. We've got some international members, and we want to have some international affiliate clubs. And one of the things that we're doing is we're working on right now 3 different annual conventions for the Astronomical Leagues, Alcons. And one of the ones that we're working on, it won't happen this year, but in the next 3 years, one of our Alcons will be in Canada. It'll be in an international location beyond our American boundaries. And we will be working with the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. And so we are becoming more and more international. Finally, let me say a word about outreach. And this is near and dear to me. I have been involved in outreach since I was a teenager. And now I have the privilege of being the coordinator for the Outreach Award. And so when you make a submission for that award, that submission comes to me. And I keep track of all the events and all the individuals who come to your events and the number of hours you put in to outreach. You have to fill that out in your submission, and we keep a track of that. And we've done so since 2006 when we started this program. Now, I got to tell you, outreach ground to a halt because of the pandemic. We weren't hosting these outreach events, and people were not making the submissions for these awards. But they are back online. It is the delight to see outreach award submissions coming in once again with regularity. And over the last several years, since 2006, when we started this program, 1,300 individuals have issued submissions and received awards in outreach. Over 1,000 people.
Wow.
And these 1,300 people have held almost 32,000 events. And they've put in over 100,000 hours of volunteer time.
Holy smokes.
And they have brought astronomy to over 4 million people. To be exact, 4,419,293 people have been touched by the outreach efforts of astronomy. Our hobby is growing. It's thriving like it's never done before. It is a great time to be part of the Astronomical League.
Wow.
Well done.
Yeah, it was very well done. He did an amazing job on that.
Nice.
But he's right. I mean, it's amazing how many people during the pandemic turned to astronomy, and how many new members that we did have. And most of them, if I understood it right, joined clubs that were already there. Very few new startup clubs. Most people joined clubs already that had been organized.
Yeah, it was one thing they could get out under the skies even during the pandemic and do some observing. And of course, Scott can certainly attest to this. It hit the manufacturers and dealers for astronomy equipment.
Yeah.
Hard to get equipment all the way through. And so it's really was a boom on many fronts.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
great.
I think we saw all kinds of things, and the outreach, like Maynard was speaking. I wish Maynard could have been here tonight too, but I loved his video. He really covered, I think, the heart of astronomy. He did a great job, but all the people, I mean, when you looked at how many people that were at where we were at last year, now I'm thinking Baton Rouge. Going the other way. Yeah,
Already there.
One of those Western cities.
Yeah. Sometimes you begin to think, okay, what year was that? Where are we going? Yeah, but when you attend an Alcon, you will meet people from all over the place. And as you see, our officers are from across the U.S. I'm in Ohio, Carol's in Missouri, Bill's in Virginia, Maynard's in Florida, and Chuck is in Kentucky. So we're all over the place. And so it's kind of nice when we get together.
And then, of course, our regional people come from all over the country.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we had online and in person for our council meeting. We had all 10 regions covered at our council meeting this year, whether they were online, or in person. So it was really nice. It's probably one of the first meetings that I can say that we've had somebody from almost every region there.
Yes, and that's another reason why Zoom and other online activities have been so important to us. It's not a substitute for being in person, but stepping back a year before this one, when Terry and Chuck Allen hosted the virtual 2021, so successful with our special guest speaker from the United Kingdom. I mean, what are the odds that we could do all those kind of things in a normal situation?
Yeah, definitely. And that is one of the really great things is you can reach, we can have speakers that before we would not have been able to afford to bring in person, and we can now have them. in person. So that has been amazing.
And it's all Scott's fault because he's the one who sold us on that idea.
We keep him busy, don't we?
We sure do. We keep asking
All right.
more and more and more. He always keeps coming through.
Good work,
All
Scott.
right.
Yeah,
As they keep
definitely.
pressing the right buttons, it's okay.
Bob King, let me ask you something if you don't mind. What
Oh, yeah.
do you see in your area? Are you part of an astronomy program or a club or?
We have a club here in Duluth, and we've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings, and we do them twice every single week. We used to have club meetings once a month, and now we do Zoom meetings every week. And then we join another club in central Wisconsin, the Eau Claire Club. And so for 2 nights a week, every week, we've been doing this throughout the entire pandemic. So it's been a ton of fun to go on Zoom and share your observations and humor. And we have a special funny cartoon section every time. So that's something we all look forward to. But in
Bob,
terms
has
of
Bob, has
What was
your club gone back to any live meetings just yet?
any what yet,
Any
Kara?
live meetings? Any live meetings yet?
In
Any
person?
In-person
Oh,
meetings?
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we did start in-person meetings about 6 months ago, and those are once a month, and then we stream that in-person meeting on Zoom too, so we keep it on Zoom the whole
Yeah,
time.
we just reopened our club in Kansas City to virtual
Mhm.
meetings or in-person meetings about 3 or 4 months ago. And I haven't been back to a in-person
Hey.
meeting yet because I got used to the Zoom situation.
I'm exactly the same. I
Yeah.
have not gone to an in-person meeting. I enjoy Zoom more. You get more
I'll
Yeah,
make
you
it
have
on
to
Zoom.
spend gas
Um,
money, no
Yeah.
gas money.
You don't have to spend gas money. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, it's a really
It's
great
just so
thing.
handy. You don't have to get up and get ready and all that kind of stuff. And
Oh, you got to do something,
yeah, get bored.
Carol,
Right?
if you stay,
You can see I am
Stand
properly
up.
dressed and everything and
Yeah,
surrounded
same
by
here.
clothes.
I'm gonna go into the wardrobe against you.
I was going to ask Santa Claus if you stood up, you don't have pajamas on, right? Okay.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
We do have
Yeah, go ahead.
But I was going to say, Carol, we do have the issue that, was it Maynard spoke to, about not much diversity in our club, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So if somebody younger is interested, we do everything we can to encourage them, get them on Zoom and all of that. But still, it's an older group.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And that we addressed that in a couple hours we spent with our diversity panel at Alcon 2022 this year. And just coming up with ideas, how in the world can we reach, one example being inner city kids who may not ever see a Milky Way, and give them opportunities to, if not actually look through an eyepiece, to maybe have ways that the league can get involved in sponsoring robotic telescope time, to where those kids, perhaps through a library, at the end of the day, can go to a library and be seeing images from the other part of the world where it's already night.
Plus, Carl, you mentioned libraries. Also, the library telescope program has been very successful, certainly down here in Southwest Virginia. And we've gotten a lot of kids involved as a result of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's been extremely
really
beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got, and the league gives away 10 of those telescopes each year
Wow.
for an individual library for all the regions, as well as a member at large. So that's been a very successful program. And John Goss, as we've talked about later, being so handy and doing so many things for the league, even past his presidency, has been very instrumental in helping with that program.
Bill, are your meetings back in person?
No, we still do Zoom. We haven't,
Okay.
it's been, since the pandemic, nothing in person yet. And I kind of miss it a little bit. You're saying that, you prefer doing the Zoom, Bob, and it's okay. And it's sort of convenient for sure. And at this time of the year in wintertime, when the weather's bad, it's good. But I don't know, every now and then you just like to sit down face to face with folks and be able to chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there is that. And then when somebody gives a presentation, we'll do short presentations at our in-person meetings. So
Right.
don't do that too much on Zoom. So I do miss that. And the other thing is, every one of those in-person meetings, there's food at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Our moderator,
right.
brings cookies, donuts, cakes, whatever.
And good food is as much a part of astronomy as telescopes are.
Yeah,
I
it
agree.
is. Yeah. Hot chocolate, caffeine, you name it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
chocolate. Yeah, it's all good.
Hot
Bill,
toddies.
I was going to ask you, being treasurer of the trust fund and the league, you kind of put on two hats, but it is so nice having the experience that you have, because just like some of the things I saw in email this week for the trust fund, you have came up with some excellent ideas, and it really helps having the experience that you have in the position that you hold. I know there's not a lot to talk about there, but you do such a good job, and your talent really does shine through.
Well,
Yes,
thank you.
as president, when I hear from Bill and says we're in great shape, then I take his word, because he has such an excellent track record, and we really appreciate all
Yeah.
you've done for us, Bill.
I spent my whole career in accounting and finance, but I think it was really, really important when we made that change last year and decided that the treasurer of the Astronomical League ought to be the treasurer of the trust fund as well.
Well, you have the
You need to see both sides of what's going on, and
exactly.
they're there for the same reason, but then again, different reasons. So, yeah.
Yeah, but you mesh it so well. You
That's right.
understand both sides. It's really nice to have that experience.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm old enough to have that experience.
Maybe
Bill, where are you at again?
I'm just north of Roanoke, Virginia, Southwest Virginia,
Okay.
about 20 miles north of Roanoke, in a little town called Fincastle. Actually, John Goss lives in the same town. That's why I can't. I hope he's listening. Although I would have thought he might have sent me a note by now, but he hasn't. So, no, but yeah. So we're really out in the country, and I used to live in New Jersey, like 25 miles from New York City, and so I didn't. Was lucky to see the moon, much less the stars. But here it's really nice, and I can just go out in my backyard. I don't need to go to a dark spot. I got one right in my backyard.
Yeah. What
That
an
makes it so
advantage.
nice.
Yeah,
Would you guys, since the Astronomical League is a member-based organization, could we take a couple of minutes to talk about how you become a member and what the member types are?
Sure. Most people become members through individual astronomy clubs. However, there's other options as well. We can come in as a member at large, and we have also associate members and other categories. Terry, do you remember those categories, or Billy, the one?
We do have, lifetime members. I'm trying to think, because most people I know have joined through clubs, but our international members are MALs, a member at large.
Right.
So there's probably a couple of others, but I can't really remember the different levels.
We can actually set up members at large memberships through the league store, league sales at astroleague.org. You can go on the Facebook the page there and join as a member in that way. One of the benefits, you get a certificate, you get a choice of certain books when you come in as a member at large. So there's several, and I believe it's $40 to $45 a year. There's another rate for younger astronomers. So that's a good situation there. And so there's those options that are available to different ways. If you don't have a club near you, the member at large is an excellent vehicle for that. And we have several members at large that do join us on the GSP, the Global Star Party. So they can feel more a part of the league and joining that and through the program we're on right now.
Yeah, so the easiest way, really, go to our website if there is not a local club, because joining the local club would be the first option that I think is best, because you're learning from experienced people. So go to your local club if there is one, And if they are a member of the league, you can ask them if they're a member of the league, or you can go on our website and see what clubs. And I'm not sure how up to date the list of clubs is on our current website, but it'll give you an idea.
And I'm going to step back just a little bit and say, I was hoping we would get at the league a major Christmas present this year. That is having our league website totally finished, our new one, and up to speed. We're not going to quite make it. We got about 10 days left, but it's coming very soon, and I think you'll be very pleased with it. And I'd like to digress just a second. We're talking about getting exposed to an astronomy club and so on. One thing that I was very privileged to do about 2 months ago was help the Minnesota Astronomical Society celebrate its 50th anniversary. And at the same time, that was Astronomy Day weekend for the fall version. And I know most of our clubs who celebrate Astronomy Day do so in May, but a few further north in Bob King's territory up in that area, it works out better for them to have it in the fall. And there was a good turnout there, and it was very well done. And we are going to do a little bit of revamping with Astronomy Day. You'll be hearing more about that very shortly, but it's a wonderful opportunity to invite the public out to your individual club and that special event, and you can get some new members that way. So it's another way of seeing people interested in astronomy face to face and possibly getting new members. So that's something we're breathing new life into, and we'll have more information shortly on that.
Okay, how about, we've been talking a while here. Maybe we better get moving on and let me go ahead and ask the questions for tonight for the door prizes. And does anybody else have anything they would like to say before we move on? Nope. Okay, well, thank you, all of you. I appreciate all of your input and for you being here tonight. So let me go ahead and get to the door prizes. So tonight we're going to be giving away a tote bag, and tonight I want to do things just a little bit different. Let me see if I can. We have no international shipping right now because shipping internationally has become a major problem. This tote bag, we have given it away before, and by the time it was shipped out of the country, the total cost of this $12 tote bag was $60. So for right now, we've had to stop international shipping. So, you know, if you're international and somebody will probably contact you and say, sorry. Right now, we have to figure out a better way to do it. So tonight we will have 3 winners, and each winner will receive a tote bag. Somebody from the Astronomical League will contact you. And this is not going to be like the Global Star Parties. Tonight, please answer the questions as soon as you can, because I will announce the winners right after Bob King is done. So, questions for tonight. Talking about Astronomy Day. Astronomy Day will celebrate its 50th anniversary in 2023. Come and celebrate with all the clubs with us. We'll have a great celebration on a Saturday in April 2023. What Saturday will that be? What date will it be that we will celebrate Astronomy Day in April? What will the date be? And please send your answers to secretary@astroleague.org. This week, this is a great topic. Bob's going to be talking about the sun. We have had a series of M-class flares this week, and it's still ongoing. It is amazing how the sun has really woke up here recently. But anyway, we had a series of M-class flares that left the sun this week. What was the number of the sunspot that was responsible? The sunspots are numbered, as you can see here in this picture. And I'm pointing to I gave you the answer. Don't look too close. What sunspot number was responsible? The last question, and please send your answers to secretary@astroleague.org. What planet is near the moon on December 29th? Again, please send your answers to secretary@astroleague.org. What planet is near the moon on December 29th? And for right now, that is where I will stop. And what do you think? Do we need to take a break, or do we want to go right into Bob King's talk?
That's up to you.
Okay, Bob, are
I think
you ready?
I could mention a few things from the audience here.
Sure.
Yeah, we've got Bob and Don Nab watching from Chester County Astronomical Society in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Andrew Corkill's watching out in California. We've got Josh Kovac. Donald Wendling is watching. Wanted to know if we missed him. Of course we did. John Jardine Goss is watching. Okay.
That'd be.
That's
Hey,
right.
John.
That's right. Astro Mo was there to tell me that they weren't seeing Maynard Pitt's video as well as I saw in your little chat there as well. Terry, thank you. And thank you very much, Astro Mo. All right, Book Davies is watching. Mike Moderson, I think is how it's pronounced, perhaps. He has certificate number 1238 from the Astronomical League's Outreach Awards. So congratulations to him. Bob Book Davies is saying everybody's looking good. Mike says he's done hybrid live and Zoom meetings going forward for the Omaha Astronomical Society. And that he has just signed up for the Bellevue Public Library for their outreach programs. Book says that the NEKAAL, Astronomical League, does in-person and Jitsi, which is like using Zoom. All right. And Mike says, Moderson says, I've been promoting the Library Telescope program in Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota. We've added 23 libraries in the last 6 months. Congratulations.
Wow, that's great.
And he said that they were also fortunate enough to receive one of the Horkheimer Library Telescope donations at the last Alcon. So that's something that I guess you guys are doing every Alcon event, which is great. Josh Kovac is watching and very excited about the new website finally coming out. And Book Davies is ogling that nice tote bag. So
Keep your fingers crossed.
and Marie Lott, who's watching on Facebook, says, we're having our quarterly potluck meeting tomorrow. Food is always a draw. So there
If we
go.
could only have food on Zoom.
Yeah,
right.
well, we could. You just have to make it yourself, and we can eat together. Yeah, you know.
I don't think people would
Food
like
might
to
be
see us
good.
eating.
Okay, so we can either break, or if you'd like to introduce Bob King, we can do that.
Let's just go ahead with Bob King if you are ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, let
All
me
right.
introduce you, even though everybody probably already knows you.
Oh,
Bob King fell in love with the night sky and astronomy when he was a kid growing up in Illinois, and loves to share his passion with people of all ages. He writes for Sky and Telescope's website and magazine, and maintains the Astro Bob astronomy blog. His books, Night Sky with the Naked Eye and Wonders of the Night Sky You Must See Before You Die, describe the joys of sky watching, while Urban Legends of Space examines science versus pseudoscience in astronomy. Bob sees everything he's read in astronomy book, with the exception, Bob wants to do how did I get C in here? Somehow I have C. Bob wants to see everything he reads about in astronomy books, with the exception of falling into a black hole.
Oh.
Yeah, spaghettification is not something I would really want to do myself either. So, Bob, thank you for joining us tonight, this nice December night. We really appreciate you being here. And Bob is going to talk about something near and dear to a lot of us. So Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Terry, for that nice introduction. I appreciate that. We're going to talk about the sun today, which is, you think, why talk about the sun in winter? Well, it's going to become our focus pretty soon here because we're headed for the winter solstice on December the 21st, very first day of winter when the sun reaches its lowest point in the sky. And the reason the sun is my topic, not just because of the solstice, but also because this is turning out to be a really active solar cycle against the original predictions. So things are getting really exciting up there, as you mentioned earlier, Terry. So we'll start with the presentation now. Hold on. Share my screen. And can you all see the image?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. It's clear. That's called Embracing Solar Cycle 25 and the Pleasures of Solar Observing. I know typically when I talk with my friends who are amateur astronomers, most of their focus, and mine too, really, I guess, is on the night sky, what you can see at night. But there are many joys of solar observing. And if you haven't started observing the sun, this is like the perfect time to start. Because as I mentioned, and we'll explore in a little more detail, how active the sun has become. The sun is kind of, I guess it's an unusual body in a way because it's made out of something that you don't find on Earth very much. It's made out of a material called plasma. And there's a lively photograph of the sun there showing you its plasma-like nature. Plasma is often called the fourth state of matter. There are actually more than 4 states, but the most familiar ones are solid, which you see here on the left, like an ice cube where the molecules interlock into lattices and patterns. And then if you heat a solid, notice here we're adding heat as we go, break those bonds and it becomes a liquid, and then you continue adding heat and eventually those atoms move apart from one another and become a gas. But you can go a lot further than a gas. If you heat it to millions of degrees, you don't have to go that hot, but if you heat it to a very high temperature, you can actually separate the electrons from the nuclei of the atoms. So you've got kind of a soup of electrons and protons floating around separate. And this soup is called plasma. And it's usually a high energy state, and the sun being as hot as it is, something like 27 million degrees in its core and 10,000 degrees on the surface or photosphere of the sun. The sun has got the heat it takes to convert matter, mostly hydrogen, into plasma. Cool things about plasma, and we can find examples of it here on the Earth. During a lightning storm, whenever there's lightning, the intense heat from those bolts will actually ionize the air and break apart the electrons. They'll separate the electrons from the nuclei of the atoms, oxygen, nitrogen, and briefly create a plasma. But you need a high temperature, as you can see, 50,000 degrees. That's the approximate temperature of lightning. Another familiar place where you're going to find a plasma is in a neon sign, where electricity is used to separate the electrons from neon, and then when they pop back into their orbits, they release that familiar orange-red light that we associate with neon. So neon signs, a variety of different signs that use gases are really plasmas when we look at them. So you can go and get a beer, and next time you're at the bar, look up, and there it is in front of you, an example of plasma, the very same material that you would find in the sun. Plasmas are fascinating for another reason, because once you've separated out those electrons, so you've got this mix, they're called ions. You've got ions and you've got electrons. It turns out that it's sort of like electricity. And in this example that you see here, we've got a battery, a wire, and when the circuit is connected and the current, the electrons, flow through the wire, they create a magnetic field. And plasmas do the same thing because there's a lot of electrons floating around and all of that heat. So moving electrons in plasma also create a magnetic field similar to the way moving electricity, a current, does. Now we come back to the sun. You've got this star up there made out of hot plasma, and it is just swirling all about. It's convecting from deep below the surface, and this creates an overall magnetic field around the sun. And I've got the poles written in here, north and south, and it very much resembles a titanic version of a bar magnet. And just the same way a bar magnet's magnetic field is revealed when you sprinkle iron filings around it, the gases in the solar corona will follow the field lines of the sun's magnetic field. And it's a beautiful demonstration to see. If you've ever gone to see a total solar eclipse, when the sun's covered, you can see the corona. Those beautiful feathery parts of the corona very strongly resemble a magnetic field. You're kind of looking at the sun's magnetic force for the first time visually with your eyes. So that's the sun's magnetic field, the overall field. And by the way, I put north-south there, but it flips every 11 years so that the South Pole becomes the North Pole and the North becomes the South Pole. A little bit different from a typical magnet. Now we come to sunspots, which is one of the key things to look at through your solar telescope. Magnetic fields and sunspots are much, much stronger compared to the overall magnetic field of the sun. The sun's overall field is only like twice the magnetic field of the Earth, twice its strength, but sunspots are way, way up, like 4,000 times as strong. And where you concentrate a lot of magnetic energy, really cool things can happen that you can see through your telescope, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. The first ones are sunspots. Sunspots are those dark spots we see on the sun's surface. They're actually cooler areas, and they're formed because the sun is a plasma sphere that does not rotate at the same rate depending on latitude. Like the whole Earth all spins together, but the sun, because it's made out of plasma, the equator of the sun goes around once every 25 days, whereas the poles take 36 days. And what happens is that differential rotation, as it's called, winds up the magnetic fields that are beneath the surface of the sun. And they become so twisted that they become buoyant, and they actually lift up from beneath the surface and pop to the top. And we see them as dark spots. Those are areas of high magnetic energy that have been buoyed up through the surface, created by that differential rotation. So we see it here. The reason they're cooler, or I should say the reason they're darker, is because sunspots are several thousand degrees cooler than the surface, because they're like insulators. They inhibit the heat coming up from beneath the sun's surface. So they look a little cooler and therefore darker. If you want to, I was thinking or looking for an example of how magnetic fields get twisted by that differential rotation of the sun over time. And if you've ever built a balsa wood airplane, you know that it's powered by a rubber band that you take and you continually spin the propeller and you twist and knot that rubber band. And then when you let go, you can fly the plane based on the energy in that twisted, knotted band. Sunspots are kind of like that. They're like magnetic rubber bands, ropes, knotted and twisted and packed with magnetic energy, and a lot of good fun, as we'll see here in a minute. Sunspots, their number, and along with all the other different types of solar activity like flares and prominences and so on, the sun's activity and the amount of those things varies in a cycle. And you're probably already familiar with the solar cycle. The one that is the most familiar is the 11-year cycle. The sun starts low at a solar minimum when we see minimum activity, very few sunspots. Sometimes a couple of months can go by when there are no spots visible. Gradually, it ramps up in activity. More sunspots, more magnetic energy, potential for flares increases, and northern lights as well. And this is just an example showing you sunspot solar cycle here beginning in 1910. and all the way to the current cycle. And this graph for the current cycle, notice at the very end there, it's cycle number 25. That's the one we're in right now. A year or so ago, that was the prediction for cycle number 25. Notice that since the 80s, the cycle peaks have been dropping. So solar astronomers predicted that it would continue to gradually decline. Well, the good news is they were wrong. And a new prediction has been made that we'll see in just a moment. Here's the last solar minimum that occurred in December of 2019. And maybe some of you remember that. You looked at the sun, nothing. There's very, very little to see day after day, even week after week. But this year in particular, activity has gone up and sunspots have been visible on the sun, I don't want to say every day, but most of the days of 2022. Our next maximum, as you saw on the graph, is predicted for July of 2025. Here's the similar graph, but a new prediction for the solar cycle, and it does show the same peak in July of 2025, but notice it's quite a bit higher. So, and this is being borne out right now by, we're still a couple of years from that peak, and yet we are seeing sunspots, in particular, a lot of naked eye sunspots routinely. These big spots are often places where solar activity is very intense. Here's proof right here. If you've been out this week looking at the sun, you will have seen that there's been like 9, 10 or so groups visible. The sun has been, it's got a bad case of chicken pox. The sun has been busy with groups. And I'm not going to give it away, Terry, but one of these regions has produced all of those different flares, those M-class flares that you mentioned earlier. It's really been popping. Hopefully, some of the material from those flares, hopefully blasted in Earth's direction, could lead to an uptick or a chance for the northern lights in the coming nights. Let's look at sunspots. First of all, we talked in general that there are cooler regions on the sun. There are places where magnetic energy is concentrated, that's been put up from below. This is a small sunspot. It's about 9,500 miles wide. Shows that classic form, the dark core called the umbra, surrounded by the paler kind of fibrous penumbra. Inside the umbra, look at that temperature. That's 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 4,000 degrees cooler than the sun. No wonder it looks dark. I should say cooler than the sun's surface, called the photosphere. The penumbra is a lot paler. It's closer to the temperature of the photosphere. There's a map or a little United States here to give you an idea. But again, this is not a large spot. We'll look at those here coming up. That image, which is just, I mean, the detail in it is absolutely spectacular. That image comes from a fairly new telescope called the Daniel K. Inouye Solar Telescope that is right now working atop Mount Haleakala in Maui, Hawaii. And it is the largest solar telescope right now in the world. It's a 4-meter mirror. And if you want to just have fun, just type in a Google search, Inouye Solar Telescope, Maui Solar Telescope, and look at the images and some of the videos from this instrument. It is just spectacular. So this new instrument is obviously going to result in breakthroughs in our knowledge of the solar cycle, sunspots, and the fine details of the sun's surface. Getting back to sunspots, there's so much to focus, right? When you take a telescope out, that's the first thing you're going to see when you look at the sun with a safe solar filter. As you get familiar with sunspots, you notice that they are often found in pairs. And just like a magnet, they have a north and a south pole. One end of a sunspot group will be the North Pole, and the other end will be the South Pole. So you've got both poles of a magnet represented in a sunspot group. And this is a splendid example right here in this photograph of several groups with north and south poles. Another thing, when you point your telescope at the sun, that you'll see, and here you can see our umbra right there, surrounded by a very beautiful penumbra, you're going to see a granulated surface on the sun. If you look through just a welder's glass, the sun looks perfectly smooth. But if you magnify the sun about 25 times or more. You don't need a ton of magnification. But if you bring it up, you'll see that it sort of has a sandy-like or a rice grain textured surface, very, very fine. And here you can see it in more clarity. These are called granules, all right? And these are individual cells of hot gas that are rising up from beneath the surface of the sun, kind of overspilling on the top, and then sinking, the gas cools, and then it sinks back down, gets reheated, and comes up again. It's like making a pot of oatmeal. And each one of these tiny cells is about 1,000 miles across or so. It's about the size of the state of Texas. Here's an example of what's really happening when you see those granules. It's just like boiling a pot of water. It's convection, right? The heat from below rises to the top, cools, drops back down, and it circulates and circulates again and again. So when you boil water, think about those granules. This is a photograph, or I should say taken by a Swedish solar telescope. And here you see the granulation in a time lapse. And look at how, it's just incredible detail here. You can see the bright cores. Oh, let's look at that again, if we can. You can see those bright cores, and then the gas is rising, and then it sinks into those dark channels. So this is what the sun is like. It is a seething, streaming, busy sphere of gas, sphere of plasma. So there's a lot of currents there and a lot of things happening, a lot of movement that it's hard for us to picture unless you see those videos. So let's get back to sunspots once again. And as I mentioned earlier, we often see simple little groups of spots or just a simple North Pole, South Pole group. But sometimes in really big groups, or it doesn't necessarily have to be really big, but in complex groups, you can have multiple poles crunched right next to each other. Look at this monster of a spot here. It's got a South Pole there, a North Pole there, South. They're all very close. And I want you to keep in mind while you're looking at this, that this surface is just in tumult. It's boiling and bubbling, and there's convection happening, just like that pot of hot water boiling. And what can happen in these situations when you have those norths and souths so close to each other that they can reconnect. And when those norths and souths reconnect, it's like two magnets slapping together, South Pole, North Pole. They make that snap and they reconnect and they release a powerful flare, a tremendous amount of energy. It sort of goes like this. I tried to find an illustration that would be appropriate. Yes, and this is it, magnetic. Check the eye out. Oh, there it is. All right, getting back to business here. I couldn't resist that cartoon, Wile E. Coyote. What happens then is when those fields reconnect to each other, energy is liberated, multiple atomic bombs worth of energy, hydrogen bombs worth of energy, and that's called a solar flare. And this is an image taken by NASA's Solar Dynamics Explorer telescope showing a flare in action. Here's another one. Flares spray radiation towards the Earth, ultraviolet light. They can affect radio communications. Occasionally, they will spray out particles as well that are driven towards the Earth. And sometimes they can actually blast large clouds of matter and create a CME, a coronal mass ejection, as you see here. Coronal mass ejections, these big, powerful clouds of solar gases that are blasted into space, they can be released for several reasons. Doesn't require a flare, but a flare sometimes gives it a kick and it'll blast out a little piece of the sun's atmosphere into space, occasionally in the direction of the Earth. When those clouds, when one of those mass ejections, perhaps caused by one of those flares, streams outward towards us, it's actually a cloud of plasma headed towards the Earth, travels typically like 1,000,000 miles an hour or more, and it's filled with the sun's magnetic field. So it's got north and south and north and south kind of buried within it. It's a magnetized cloud of plasma. And if conditions are right, that magnetized cloud of plasma can link into Earth's magnetic field and then stream down along our planet's magnetic field lines at very high velocity and slingshot particles right back towards the Earth. When they strike the atmosphere, they can create the northern lights. It's an amazing fact that when those electrons, primarily electrons in the plasma, cause the northern lights, those electrons are streaming in Earth's magnetic field lines at something like 44 million miles an hour. And when they strike the upper atmosphere, that is plenty of energy enough to excite the oxygens and the nitrogens up there. And then when they relax back to their original state, they give off greens and they give off reds and purples. And that's what we see as the northern lights. And the aurora is actually inside this feature called the auroral oval. There's a north one that you see here, and there's a south version too, the southern oval. And the oval is centered over Ellesmere Island, which is where the North Magnetic Pole is. It's not the geographic pole, but the North Magnetic Pole. And it so happens that if you live in the United States, particularly the northern US, when solar activity goes up, the auroral oval expands. It expands southward. And that brings the aurora into the northern US, like North Dakota, Minnesota, Michigan, and so forth. Sometimes when it really expands, it becomes visible all the way down to Florida. This is where I live. It was a winter night, and the aurora was just spectacular because something happened on the sun. There was a flare, there was a coronal mass ejection. Sunspots come in all sizes. You know that by now. But I looked up what the largest sunspot group that's been visible in modern times, and that was in April of 1947. Check it out. We've got the Earth here for comparison and Jupiter. This is region 14886, and that is a giant right there. I don't think I've seen large sunspot groups, but nothing quite like that. But who knows? It could happen at any time again. Large sunspots require no special equipment no optical equipment really, except a number 14 welder's glass, which is my favorite naked eye tool. But you can also use eclipse glasses too, as long as they're undamaged, just what you would bring to a total solar eclipse. But I love the number 14 filter. It's glass. I can't wreck it. It provides a very sharp image of the sun when you look through it. And this year, I have been giving that filter one heck of a workout, starting in April. Between April 10th and 26th, and I've put the pictures together here in a time lapse for you. 2 to 3 naked eye sunspots were visible through that filter, and I was able to watch them travel across the disk as the sun rotated. It was very exciting. This is the welder's glass view. Not much really, just tiny dots. The view of the telescope was spectacular. The detail that you could see, that it doesn't require a lot of magnification to see that. You can see the umbra, the penumbra, all the tiny spots within the group. This is how it looked with just 1 power magnification. Well, that was not some kind of an anomaly. So each time I see a naked eye sunspot group, I've got this little refractor I'll show you in just a minute, an 80 millimeter, 3-inch refractor. And I put my camera on the back of that thing and point it at the sun, filtered, of course, and take pictures. And these are all of the naked eye sunspot groups that have been visible. I may have missed a couple of them. I have to say, it's possible it was cloudy, whatever. But virtually every single month, every few weeks, we had either a new naked eye sunspot or an old group that went around the backside of the sun and then returned to the front, still full of activity, still punching it up. And this, I don't know, this is just really exciting. And it shows that you don't need hardly any equipment at all. to observe. You can even, if you wanted to, just using that welder's glass or eclipse glasses, you could create your own graph of the 11-year sunspot cycle without a telescope. And this is another person's graph, another group's graph that shows the number of naked eye sunspots visible. And you can see the number rises and falls with the solar cycle. So that would be a cool project to do, actually, just with the naked eye. One thing about solar observing, and we can all relate to this compared to going out at night, especially in this season, is how much warmer it is to be out observing the sun than it is being out at night. And it's easy to find the sun. If you drop a tool, you can find the tool you dropped on the ground. And it's just a joy. You just bring it out anytime the sun pops out. So I'll usually, if it's a naked eye group, I'll use the welder's glass, and then I'll bring a telescope out for a look as well, and maybe take a photograph too. These are my two main instruments, and my photos I took through this. It's a 3-inch University Optics. It's an old refractor, and there's the glass solar filter on the end. The telescope is stained because where I stored it in the shed, lightning struck the shed because there was a tree near it, and it traveled right down into the shed through my tripods, and it lit the place on fire, damaged some equipment, but not the refractor. It just got that smoky, roasted finish to it. The other instrument, and this is something I'm really excited to talk with you guys about. The other instrument I just acquired this year, and it is a Lunt 40 millimeter hydrogen alpha telescope. And we're going to look at the sun and hydrogen alpha here in just a minute. So with these two very basic and small instruments that you could just put on a tripod, you can have a heck of a time observing the sun on any clear day of the year. Obviously, for white light visual observing, you're going to need some kind of filter, whether that's a mylar filter or a glass filter, and you'll find many of those available online at all different kinds of shops, astronomy shops, Astronomics, High Point Scientific, Agena Astro, and so forth. Things you can do. Well, at its most basic, and you can do this with or without a small telescope, you can observe the sun's rotation, which, as we learned earlier, varies with sunspot latitude. It's just fun to watch a sunspot group march across the rotating sun and to see the day-to-day changes in the groups. Some groups, you look one day, you see 2 spots. The very next day, that group has doubled in size. On the other hand, you might look at a different group that seems like it's going somewhere, it's going to be expanding, and then it just sort of dies like that. So it's fun to watch these changes. On our nearest star, these things are happening all the time and worth your time. Some people like to count sunspots. So you can do this visually. And this is the only math that I'm going to do in the presentation tonight. R is the sunspot number. So if you want to count sunspots, each group, that's G for group, counts as 10 spots. And then you add all of the other spots everywhere, those within every group, and that is the sunspot number. So each group gets extra weight, okay? And then you add it to the total number of spots you see, even the tiny ones. And if there are multiple spots inside a penumbra, you add those too. And by doing that, you can come up with your own daily sunspot number. And again, if you want to, you can graph that and plot the sunspot cycle right from your own house. The other thing that's interesting, and I think often overlooked, when you look at the sun, you'll see that the limb of the sun is darker. And this is a great place to look for what are called faculae. And faculae are, it's a word that means torches. These are bright patches. They're often associated with sunspot groups. They are hotter than the photosphere, which is why they are brighter. And so they stand out, especially when the sunspot group has approached the limb of the sun, the edge of the sun. And the reason why the edge of the sun looks so much darker than the middle of the sun through your telescope is because you're looking through, your eyes just skimming through the top or bottom of the sun. But when you look at the center of the sun, it goes deep into the photosphere. So you're seeing much more brightness. You're seeing much more intensity compared to looking off to the edge where your your vision just penetrates a short distance through the edge of the photosphere. So this limb darkening is very helpful for locating and plotting, if you want to, faculae. Now, you saw the two telescopes. The one I use for white light, and then the other one, the Lunt 40mm scope, is for exploring the next layer up from the sun's surface called the chromosphere. Here you can see the whole sun cut open, so you can see that we have a core. This is where all the hot stuff is produced. Fusion happens here. The sun got a 4.6 billion year jump on nuclear fusion before humans finally figured out a way to make it work just this past week. The energy created in the fusion process radiates outward, and then it eventually reaches what's called the convective zone, which is like that pot of boiling water that brings the heat and the light to the surface of the sun. The light leaves, and then the boiling creates the granules, and the spinning sun creates the sunspots. And then beyond that, beyond the surface of the sun, which is called the photosphere, you see it right down here where the sunspots are, is the chromosphere, and that's the next layer up. Okay, it's like you're going up in an elevator. What's in that chromosphere? Well, it's a little higher and it's a little cooler, at least at its base, but it's more rarefied. So we don't see the chromosphere with our eye when we look through a regular telescope because it's too faint. The gas is a lot thinner there, but it's the ideal temperature and density of gas. I call it gas, I mean plasma, but it's the ideal temperature and density for hydrogen to get to emit red light. So the chromosphere is a very perfect name for it, which means color sphere. So you see, when you look through the appropriate filter, a hydrogen alpha filter, you see, instead of the photosphere, you see that red light emitted by hydrogen. And the features are quite different there compared to the next layer down, the photosphere. Here's some examples of hydrogen alpha telescopes. That's the light that hydrogen emits in the chromosphere. So you need a specialized instrument in order to see that light and that layer. And I looked at what's out there right now, and there's a Cornell 40mm. There's the price. There's the Lunt. So I don't know what your budget is, but if you have $675, you can get into hydrogen alpha observing, not a problem. And then Daystar, they've been around a really, really long time, and they have a dedicated little telescope with their own filter for about $1,000. Here's the difference, okay? Just a simple comparison, white light sun. This is the same sun viewed in hydrogen alpha. So here we're seeing the shiny surface, the photosphere, what we see with our eye. And here we are blocking all of that light coming from the photosphere. And the filter, it's a complex filter inside that scope. It gets rid of everything but the light emitted by hydrogen gas in the chromosphere. And it starts to show some pretty interesting details here. We see these light spots, these dark wormy squiggles. The sun takes on a new appearance. Among the things that live in the chromosphere and that immediately jump out when you look at the sun in hydrogen alpha are the prominences, which normally we can only see when the sun is blocked by the moon during a total eclipse. But the hydrogen alpha scope will let you see them any clear day of the year because there are always some prominences that are around the edge of the sun. These are the most common ones you see. They're called hedgerow prominences because they kind of look like rows or groups of trees at the edge of the sun. They're very stable. Some of these hedgerow prominences, they can last for months. They change shape over time. So you can see sometimes in the space of half an hour or an hour that the shape of the prominence has changed. And that's exciting too, because you're really starting to see things in real time when you look at the sun in that ruby red light of hydrogen alpha. Here's a time lapse, a recent time lapse taken on December 7th this year, showing quiet prominence. But you can see that there's gases that are condensing, vaporizing. It's just the sun is in constant, in constant fury and in constant motion. And what happens? I love this illustration. What happens when a prominence, as the sun rotates, when what was a prominence at the edge of the sun rotates onto the shiny bright side of the sun? When that happens, the prominence is seen to the left, and we call that a filament. So here's our prominence on September 15th, 16th, 17th, 19th. The sun has rotated it onto the front side. And here it is. Just these fantastic shapes too, sometimes that prominences take. But again, when they're on the disk, we call them filaments. And sometimes you'll hear about a big northern lights display, and it won't have been a flare, but the magnetic field holding that prominence, it's almost like a hammock, holding that prominence has been disrupted somehow and launched that prominence or filament into space. So if you hear about a filament flying off the sun, which it's really a prominence that's been launched into space due to some instability in the sun's magnetic field. Two basic, if we're going to divide it and categorize it, two basic types of prominences. There are the quiescent ones that kind of hang around for days, even months. And then there are the active prominences. And these guys appear over sunspot groups and are often associated with flares. And they can change right before your eyes. You can see these magnetic loops form above the sunspots, the north-south poles. And it's very exciting. It's mesmerizing. You just don't want to walk away from the telescope when there's an active prominence. They only last for minutes to hours. And here's kind of a view of this is what the sun actually looks like on a good, steady seeing day. And it can be almost this detailed, even in one of those small scopes. You've got this swirly texture, and that texture is made up of something called fibrils, which are solar gases, plasma, that's being directed by magnetic fields that are all over the surface of the sun. There are bright spots called plages, Plages. You'll see them usually associated with sunspot groups. What they are the expression of faculae up into the chromosphere. So faculae are not just something sitting on the surface. They actually go all the way up into the chromosphere, and through a hydrogen alpha filter, we see them as plages, these bright spots. And then here they are. You know what these guys are? The filaments. Okay, look at all those filaments. And those were all, once upon a time, prominences. You put a filament at the edge of the sun, and that's what you see. And then right at the edge of the sun through hydrogen alpha, it's a very cool thing to look at. Be sure to watch for this. It's like when you don't shave after about 3 days, you get a little bit of a 3-day shadow. These are called spicules. And what they are fibrils, all right, all that swirly stuff, seen edge up. And so they get a special name. They're called spicules. They're very tall, but they're narrow spires of hot gas or plasma. Here's a close-up view. There are 3 million of those guys active in the chromosphere at any particular time. 3 million spicules. The sun is literally hairy with these things. Again, visible in red light, H alpha red. Sometimes filaments can become just enormous. We had one here not long ago, September 4th. And this image has been processed to bring out all these amazing details. The sun won't actually look like this visually, but you can process it. Here's the Earth. And look at this, 410,000 miles long. That's just enormous. You really get to appreciate how bizarre a thing the sun is, that it's a star, and you can begin to see the processes on the star right before your eyes. One of the best things to see, the most exciting, is a flare, a solar flare. And anyone who has seen one through their scope will say that it's like one of the, it would rank as one of your top 10 sites. You know, maybe the Orion Nebula would be in that top 10. Maybe seeing the polar cap on Mars. But if you see a flare, it's unbelievable because it happens right before your eyes. There was one this summer that I observed and shared with my daughter, and it looks just like this. The sun has that red-orange color, and then there's this sudden intense brightening, and you could watch it expand and brighten in a really big flare. It almost makes you want to step back from the telescope because you sense a huge thing happening 93 million miles away, but potentially that could affect what's happening on the Earth, whether it be radio communications, satellite damage, northern lights. So you can see these and sense these direct connections with the sun. This is a time lapse. I couldn't find a really good one, but this is a time lapse of a solar flare. Usually you see those fibrils there, and then a little point, and then it'll expand often into sort of a double ribbon shape. What's wonderful about the Astronomical League is that you can do this on your own, okay? And I've given you a bit of an introduction about the sun and what you can see, whether it's white light or in ruby red hydrogen alpha. But there are a couple of programs that will help you learn more about the sun, and also you'll be able to contribute observations to these programs. The Sun Spotter observing program and the Hydrogen Alpha solar observing program. And I would encourage you to get involved in either or both, and learn all the different features of the sun and just enjoy the pleasure of being out as this solar cycle, this cycle number 25, bears down on us in the most wonderful way. And with that, my presentation is finished, and I'll come back to you here. Hold on, if I can find you. There we go. Oh, all right. And if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, there are some questions here.
Yeah.
Harmony, watching on YouTube, wants to know, do hydrogen alpha filters have a limited lifespan?
Not that I know of, but I do know that there's a filter. It's like multiple filters in a hydrogen alpha filter. With some hydrogen alpha filters, you have to get them refurbished after, say, 10 years of use. So you would send it back. Often the blocking, it's called a blocking filter, has to be replaced or fixed. But no, they last many years if taken care of. So you're good to go if you do get a hydrogen alpha scope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have, when I worked at Mead Instruments, we built the Coronado H alpha systems. And some of them, after many years, you could see some of the filters oxidize, okay? The telescope was built in such a way that it was never harmful, okay? But you started to lose detail, and when that happens, yeah, you do need to contact the manufacturer and get it, reworked, so.
Yeah, I had Scott, I had a Daystar filter way back in the 80s. And I used that for about 10, 12 years. And I noticed the image was getting a little soft. And so I did have to send that in, and it was refurbished. And everything looked nice and crisp after that. So
I'm sure. Yeah.
So it can happen, but there's a way to fix it if it does.
That's true. And doing as Bob recommended, proper care of the telescope. And that means that you want to keep it in a dry, dust-free area as much as possible when you're storing it. You just don't, you take care of it like you would any good camera lens. So.
Yeah, it's the ones these days you can get, obviously you can spend as much money as you want, but if you just want to get into it, that simple, the ones that I showed you, where you can just mount it on a tripod. To me, anything in astronomy, the quicker you can get out and actually see something, the happier you're going to be, the more you're going to use whatever the instrument is. And so if I see the sun out, I just like, I think there's some sunspots today. I want to see what's happening with that group. So I'll just take out I've already got it on a tripod. So I just walk out with the tripod and look. And if there's something exciting, I'll take the lens out and then put my DSLR in there and take a few photos as well. It's quite easy to do solar observing, I think.
Well, the whole point of having telescopes is being able to actively explore the sky. And if you're doing that enough, you're going to see some amazing things. Okay, if you're only if your end game is just to have the gear, that's kind of a shame, because the gear is meant to really get out there and to allow you to do some personal discovery, personal exploration, and if you really get into it, you can have a very, very rich experience. And if you want to take that extra step, you can also do science. So all possible.
Yeah, exactly. And all good points, but I think that's kind of the key thing, whether you're doing science or not. It's personal discovery through the telescope, and it's all about enjoyment to me, and getting to know the celestial neighborhood. You see the sun all the time, and it's calling you to take a closer look. And when you do, it's similar to any experience you might have in nature, say, whether that might be birding or flower identification or butterfly observation, where you really get to know the animal, the object, whatever it is, and that bond or connection that you make with nature, because the sun is part of it all, brings great enjoyment and fulfillment, at least for me. So that's one of the joys of astronomy.
Yeah, definitely. Have you got any more questions, Scott?
No, I think, go ahead.
Okay, Bob, I'm confused. They say one of the ways to tell that the next solar cycle is happening is the north and the south poles reverse on the sunspots. Is that, how does this happen?
Oh, that's a really complex question, but it is a fact that, it is a fact that the changeover from one cycle to the next involves the appearance of the first sunspot groups with the reverse poles instead of north-south.
Right.
And they'll usually spot those very early new cycle groups closer to the poles. That's where they first appear. And then gradually the old north-south disappear, and it becomes all south-north. And then you're right in the throes of the new cycle. But there's always that beginning, where there's a mixture of the two types of sunspot groups until it's pretty much taken over by that arrangement, those polarities, north-south, south-north. Yeah, and then that's all part of the sun's pole flipping too, south-north. Sun just does it a lot faster than the Earth does. The Earth's poles also flip, but the time scale is just vast, eons, many hundreds of thousands of years. Does that help to answer your question?
That does, because I didn't really think about that. As it flips, it's going to make that changeover, because I know it takes a long time to tell for sure that you have moved into the next solar cycle. It's not something that can say on Wednesday, on the 7th, we went to cycle 25. It takes a while in order to tell the cycle has changed.
Yep, there's always those very early groups that indicate that it's beginning to get underway. And speaking of the solar cycle, we always talk about the 11-year cycle because it matches the sunspots so nicely. But maybe some of you saw on Space Weather recently, a group of solar scientists published a paper, and they're now suggesting that the real sunspot cycle is a little bit different. It might be 17 years long, and that there are two cycles happening simultaneously. So just when we get everything kind of set in our mind, so typical of science, there's a new discovery here. But their model does predict a higher peak for cycle 25, which looks like where we're headed. Yeah,
it definitely does. Also on Space Weather today, did you see where they actually have a picture of a flare happening? Check out.
I don't know if I looked at it today.
Yeah, check it out today. It looks like somebody took an image of the flare as it was happening. Anyway, it looks pretty cool. So check that one out too. That's real
When-
interesting right now.
I will take a look at that. I
Yeah,
have just a quick flare experience. That one I mentioned, seeing this past summer. I was out with my daughter at the time, and I said, Katie, you got to look at this. This is a solar flare. I don't think you've ever seen a solar flare. So she looked at it through the telescope, watched it kind of radiate and grow. And she said, yeah, that looked like hot lava, Dad. It's like, yes, it does. It looks like a river of really hot lava that's, flowing before your eyes. So yeah, that's so exciting. It's just a great thing that hydrogen alpha viewing, the price of it has come down. And so more people can see the sun that way, the prominences and the flares and all the things that you read about or hear about during total solar eclipses. So
yeah,
that's
it's
a big
amazing to
positive.
me. It's amazing to me to be able to look at the surface of a star. To
Yeah, and
actually say we can see the surface of a star. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's the only one.
Yeah.
And it's
Definitely
it's like the moon in that regard. You look at the moon, and it's really the only thing that a person with a common telescope can just get into, because you could see
Right.
just it's a real place, and the sun is a real place too, the same way, because it's close, and it is the only star, not a pinpoint. So
Yes,
what a pleasure! What a pleasure!
It is. It really is. So,
Yeah.
all right. Nobody else has anything. Bob, thank you. Thank you for
You're
coming
welcome.
on in December, so close to Christmas. We definitely appreciate that. And I am going to give the answers to the questions.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's see. Let me get the right spot here. So these will be the answers to tonight's questions. Thanks to everybody that answered the questions. And we have 3 winners of the tote bag. All right. So Astronomy Day will celebrate its 50th anniversary in 2023. That will happen on Saturday, November, Saturday, April 29th, 2023. And Jim Twellman has won that. And for the winners, somebody from the league's national office will be in contact with you. And with the holidays, I'm not sure what their schedule. So please give them a little time just in case they've taken vacation around Christmas or something. The sunspot on the sun was named AR 3165, which I pointed to when I showed the slide. But yeah, it has been unbelievably active, and they're saying 3163 is the one to watch now, because if it would get active, it would be Earth directed. So we might get lucky and have something out of it, maybe, who knows. But the winner is Josh Kovach. The last question, the planet near the moon on December 29th is Jupiter. And the winner is Mike. Okay, help me out here. Modzerin. Yeah, you'll know your name. Scott, if you're talking, you're muted.
I was talking. I believe
really
it's Mike Moderson is what I think it is.
Moderson, thank you very much. Sorry for the names I butchered.
But maybe that's wrong. I don't know. Like, I'm messing it up.
Oh man, thank you very much for everybody that answered. And those are our 3 winners. Tonight, I would like to thank David Levy. And we really do appreciate him taking the time. Every star party, every AL Live, he's been here. Carol Orge, our president, has shown up time after time after time to talk to us. Greatly appreciate that. Bill Dillon, welcome to AL Live. Hopefully we'll have you back again.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for taking your time to be here. Scott, as always, thank you so much for everything you do. Bob King, it is such a pleasure to have you on. I always have so many questions, so many comments, and we get so many compliments on your talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for spending the evening with us. And to everybody out there watching, thank you so much for being here. Everybody have a happy holiday, a great new year, We really appreciate you being here. We will announce the AL Live in the near future. We need to get some dates set, and we will be announcing that probably by the next Global Star Party, definitely, if not before. We can say bye-bye to 2022 and hope 2023 is even better. Annular eclipse in October of 2023. Don't forget that. And with that, I'd like to say thank you again to all of our speakers, all of the people that were on AL Live, and all of you out here. Be safe over the holidays. We hope to see you in 2023. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You
Terry.
too.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good
Terry.
night.
Everybody.
Yeah. Thank you to the audience that's watching from around the globe, and we will, as Terry Mann says, we will have new dates for Astronomical League Live coming up. Before we go, we do have like a little feature video from a young scientist with very colorful hair. So that was something that we all remarked on.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. All right. So you guys have a great weekend. And as always, as Jack Horkheimer always said, keep looking up.
Thank you, Scott.
Have you ever wondered how, even though the sun is so much bigger than the moon, they appear to be the same size in the sky? Or how the moon can cover up the sun and cause a total solar eclipse? Let's try something out. Take any two differently sized circles. I'm using a paper plate and a coin I found. Secure the larger circle either by having a friend hold on to it for you or by using a little bit of tape. Now what you're going to want to do is take the smaller circle and hold it out at arm's length and close one eye. See if it overlaps the larger circle. If it doesn't, take a few more steps back and try again until the smaller circle completely overlaps the larger circle. What we found here is the spot where the smaller object appears to look the same size as the bigger object, despite being completely different sizes. Even though the moon is about 400 times smaller than the sun, it's also about 400 times closer to us. So when both the sun and the moon appear in the sky, the moon can completely cover up the sun and cause a total solar eclipse. Try this at home and see if you can find the point where objects appear to be the same size, despite being completely different. Eclipses are all about perspective and distances. The distance and angle of the moon can vary throughout the year, so sometimes instead of a total solar eclipse, we can get a partial solar eclipse when the moon only covers part of the sun, or an annular solar eclipse when the sun peeks out around the moon so it looks like a big ring of fire. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.